So taking a few moments to find a nice comfortable position where you can be relaxed and yet alert. Having a nice solid foundation, so if someone gave you a little push you wouldn't fall over. If you're in a chair, feet flat on the ground is good. And then tilting the pelvis a little forward, anchoring the sacrum into the foundation. And centering the spine so it's not leaning forward or back or to one side. And just adjusting it, maybe a couple of millimeters one way or another, see where it feels the most balanced. And opening the chest, opening the heart. And elevating the neck, extending it from the spine. Hands in a comfortable position. And allowing everything to relax, to soften to whatever extent it wants. And we can enjoy one sound of the bell, remembering that the bell is calling us to our true home, which is the present moment. And allowing the attention to sink deeply into the body, noticing sensation throughout the body. And noticing any holding or bracing in the body. And doing your best to drop that resistance, drop any effort to defend, and just let it all in. Relaxing any resistance. And saying thank you for this moment, for this opportunity to practice together. Thank you that I'm able to be here tonight. And if you like, noticing how the body moves with the breath. And just riding the waves of the breath. And noticing that you're the one who is aware, the one who notices. Aware of my body, I know I'm aware of my body. And whenever thoughts arise, you notice the pull of the thoughts on your attention, pulling you out of your seat of awareness, away from the body breathing, and just releasing that pull, perhaps leaning back and just letting it go. You don't need to figure anything out. You don't need to engage with the thoughts, and you don't need to stop the thoughts. Just doing your best to keep your focus on the body and the breath. And to continue to be aware that you're the one who notices. Continuing to scan for any resistance, any holding or bracing in the body, any wanting things to be different or wanting to figure things out. And when you recognize that resistance, then relaxing, dropping all effort to resist or to defend, and opening to whatever is here right now, letting it move freely as it wants, not as you want. Surrendering completely to this moment. Ah, feels good to drop that effort and just relax. There may be things going on in your experience that give rise to some fear or some discomfort, some aversion. Again, when you notice that, if you notice that there's any resistance, and there's almost always resistance, and doing your best to drop that. Remembering this is just a game. Sometimes you'll be able to drop it, sometimes not. It doesn't matter. The important thing is just to practice and allow whatever happens to happen. Good. Now noticing if there's joy in this experience, and just looking around the body. Joy is a feeling, so if it's there, it should be somewhere in the body. So again, this is a game. Doesn't matter whether joy is there or not. Maybe it's hiding somewhere. Maybe in your right at the tip of your baby finger or your big toe. Maybe somewhere on the face. You might want to try just lifting the corners of your mouth a few millimeters. Just noticing his joy here. It might be a little like hide and seek. And if you can't find any joy in the body, perhaps recognizing that it might be elsewhere, it might be in someone else's body. Or in a dandelion, or a cloud. And now noticing what other emotions might be present right now in the body. Perhaps some worry or anxiety. Where's that? What does it feel like? Letting go of any story, just noticing sensations. And dropping any resistance to feeling it. Just relaxing, opening. Saying thank you. I'm glad you're here, and I want to give you the opportunity to move as you want and be free. Release if you want. And maybe there's some restlessness. Maybe some sadness or loneliness or despair. Maybe some frustration or irritation. Maybe just a subtle sense of lack or unsatisfactoriness, unease. Or maybe there's some gratitude, some contentment. A sense of warmth and kindness. And before we bring this meditation to an end, saying to ourselves, may this practice bring happiness to myself and to all those I come in contact with, and all those they come in contact with, and so on, and so on. So feel free to open your eyes and massage whatever needs massaging, move whatever needs moving, bring some kindness to your body, ask it what it wants, and give it to it. So anyone want to share anything about that meditation or have any questions around it?
I'll just say that I don't remember the last time that there was a meditation that kind of acknowledged that there could be some not so positive feelings. So it was nice that you had a blend of things in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. And Linda? Linda G?
Yeah, what is it about the two Lindas leap into the breach first? That was really, it was really good. But I have to say, I always struggle with the joy one. I always, whenever I am doing that, I always try to find some other interpretation of joy that at least this time I didn't feel no, I don't feel joy. But so it's always a kind of a challenge, that little piece for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, it's like, isn't that interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether there's joy there or not. It is just a game, you know. It's really about, letting go of preference and um, like, what was your sense in, like, what did you notice? Like, what did you notice in terms of the emotions and your whatever story or might have been there, or whatever the experience was like?
hmm, crankiness. Um, I ain't got no stinking joy here. What are you thinking? uh, yeah, but also a sense of mm, forlorn shut outness in the thought.
Uh-huh. Was that a reaction to the lack of joy, or was that more sort of there?
I
Uh,
think that's a reaction to the reminder of the lack of joy, but I also really liked what you just said about the preference for the state.
Hmm.
But you said, find the joy in your body. And I go, there's no joy here. What are you on about?
Right.
Where am I supposed to find joy? No, it's not in my baby toe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe I wasn't skillful enough. Usually I try and frame it as an exploration, to see if there's joy there. Um, but, one thing Mickey says is he says, it's all about whether you interpret it as a problem, right? And to take the view that nothing is a problem. No joy, no problem, right? I mean, we'd all like to have joy. I mean, I like it when there's joy there. But but the main idea is don't make it a problem if there isn't, right? Just let yourself experience whatever's there without, creating a condition for your happiness, right?
Yeah,
It's an
that's cool.
odd condition, right? An odd condition to say, well, I don't need joy to be happy, but but there you go. Um, okay, so um, why don't we start with the home practice? And so I'll just remind you that the home practice included reviewing the Learn to Let Go handout. And did people get a chance to look at that? Yeah, yeah, I hope so, because that's pretty central to things. And then the meditation. So listening to either the guided meditations I provided or something else if you like. And then we did the moments of centered consciousness, which could also be called the bells of mindfulness. The practicing relax, release, lean back with the small stuff. Then we did the noticing the voice in your head in the shower. um, and then there was a talk of Mickey's. So um, I'm thinking what we can do is have a breakout, and that way you can talk about how what came up for you in the home practice. Whether there were anything interesting or obstacles or whatever might have gone on, and then we'll come back and we can people can share in the larger forum. So let's see here. So there'll be two or three participants per room. Um, I guess there could conceivably be four with Jason and Kelly, but that's just fine. So we'll have about say 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll come back. Anyone have any questions? Hmm. Okay. See you soon.
I am good, thanks.
So where are you based, Alex?
I'm in Peterborough.
Oh, you're in Peterborough. Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Toronto.
Are you? Where in Toronto?
Right downtown well, depends, that's relative. I'm in Parkdale.
Are you? Oh, I used to live in Toronto.
Really?
I miss it a lot. And yeah, I lived near Parkdale or spent a lot of time there. So nice.
Cool. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Linda. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
This was the group with two, so I joined this one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Lori,
now
I
we have to
didn't
confess to the
I didn't
teacher.
realize that you went to law school. Oh,
Yep. Class of 98, called in 2000.
oh yeah. I just graduated
Ah,
from law school.
Wow.
I didn't practice very long.
I'd be really interested to hear about your journey. sometime.
Great. Yeah, I'd be happy to share. But so please go ahead and share about your experience with home practice. Don't be embarrassed if you didn't do stuff. There's, you know, the most important thing is just to talk about it, whatever happened.
Alex, do you want to go first? Because I already opened my mouth in the big group.
Sure. Is my connection okay? You can hear me? Okay. Okay, well, what I was thinking I would share is I've put little notices around. So I work from home, so I put little notices around places that like the bathroom and the mirror and like my whiteboard here where I write like tasks for the day. I wrote relax, release, lean back. And I feel like, day 1 and 2, I really took seriously like taking the moment and like, even if though there's this sense of kind of like, okay, I've got to do this. And then like almost like waiting, like anticipating it being over, but also like making sure I'm like spending the time to do it, putting my intention to actually like let go of everything. So anyways, I noticed that, I did that and I was enjoying it. And then like, day 3 or 4, I was just like, I got to go back to work, like, and was able to not, do the actual breaths, like multiple breaths and stuff like that. But even if it was just a moment, I'm noticing that I'm there, and taking that as a part of the practice. So, but interesting how easily I was able to be like, oh, that's not a priority. I'm in the middle of my workday. And, anyways, yeah.
Mm. Yep. That's familiar.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because once I hit my work day or my busy period of the day, I'm just like on a pshoof, and and I kind of like micro focus and just like so but yeah, I found that kind of that release and lean back thing super interesting and helpful. Like I don't know if you the Lori and I have been going to another meditation group, and last week Twin did this thing where the first 20 minutes were like relaxing the face and letting go of reaction, like that you use your face to react all the time. So if your face is relaxed, you're not reacting and responding and defending all the time. And it was interesting, I often find I get the same message from 2 or 3 sources at any point in time. And so I found that it was interesting that you put notes around, Alex. That's actually pretty cool. Um, I I was able to catch myself quite a bit actually, and go and just pull back and just like actually like physically relax, which then shifted my brain state quite a bit, and not and I like that, just the idea of depersonalizing. That was really good. um, and but the who's noticing part I sort of struggled with, um,
What
because maybe
happened?
it's just too conceptual.
Mm.
Yeah. So, like, what happened when you asked who notices?
Oh, I thought a lot.
Yeah. You tried to answer the question.
Yeah, it's like in your guided meditation, like you said that and I'm like busy going through like, well, where's the seat of my consciousness? And if it's something, will I find another, and then when you said, oh, don't try to answer it, it's like, oh, right, okay, I can just let that be. And so yeah, that. But other times when I was aware of noticing, then there, I just got that 60-second warning, and I always
There's still 60 seconds.
yeah, yeah. I always get confused by that one, whether I'm supposed to, if I click leave, then I just out of there, right? I did notice that suddenly there was an awareness that came from a different place in my body, and like my eyes work differently. Like when, so that part was really interesting, to being aware of the awareness. And because then it's like suddenly I could, especially when I combined it to with a body relax, like when I could stop and actually be aware and then just relax into that, then it really shifted. It's like I could see, my peripheral vision was better, you know?
Okay. Oh, okay.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice time there. Um, Anyone want to share about their home practice? I'd love to hear any like working with the small stuff or working with moments of centered consciousness.
I can share, if that's okay.
That's okay, yeah. Go ahead, Philip.
Uh, yeah, having started reading, this is the fourth time round reading the book, so I have a better understanding, especially of the notion of intentional mind and unintentional mind. So when I read the book, I didn't quite get this distinction, but when you talked about that, that really helped me. And so I've been doing this for quite a while. And, you know, with your guidance, I'm just doing it more effectively, I'm finding. So, you know, but one of the things I was sharing is that because I'm on my own, there's not much that affects me. You know, I don't get hit by a lot of stuff. So, you know, the little things that bothered me are, you know, having to go out and get firewood, you know, 2 or 3 times a day. But I just accept it now. You know, it's just, there's no resistance. I mean, when I feel the resistance, I notice the resistance and I just laugh, and then I just go out and get the firewood.
Yeah.
And in the meditation, I just share that in the meditation, the counting to 20, I was okay first time round, struggled the second time round, and that's as far as I got. Then I'd count and then lose it, count and then lose it, count and then lose it, which fascinated me. I mean, I wasn't, you know, I realized this is not a performance piece. So, but it just fascinated me that I could not focus. I couldn't, and I wasn't, it was almost like I was not quite sleeping, but almost like a dreamlike quality to what would happen when I lost the count.
Yeah.
That I'll pass.
I mean that sounds like just like a dullness, like a low energy state.
Yeah,
Like where you're kind of floaty, you know, it's kind of
yeah,
nice and comfortable, but on the other hand, it's you know, in this idea that we're relaxed and yet alert. So that's like leaning a little too much towards relaxed. So when you notice that, you can do things like just open the chest, um, you know, just kind of lengthen the body, and maybe emphasize the in breaths a little more. And you can also switch from focusing on the belly, if that's where you're focused, to focusing on the area around your nostrils. That's more energizing. But if you're tending towards like restlessness and a lot of thinking, then the opposite is then you want to go down to the belly and emphasize the out breath a little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Like it just doesn't matter. Um, uh, whether you're more concentrated or less concentrated. It's just like, as you said, isn't that interesting? You know. Someone else want to share? Any shy folks want to go for some bonus points? So,
Hi, Laurie. I was sharing with our little group. Um, I guess the biggest part for me was the voice in my head in the shower. Um, I've been aware of it, I think, but I have a full-on conversation and participate in it prior to this course. Like sometimes I can recognize now where I was actually even talking out loud with the voice, but more so when I was paying attention to it, I could definitely, there's a lot of negative talk, or it brings up memories of it, and then some shame and despair or sadness, and then um and now I'm recognizing, like, I don't even need to participate or take ownership in it where I was so much before.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, we automatically believe that stuff just because, we think of it, we identify with it, right? We say, you know, these are my thoughts, so there's something important and true about them. Um, and that's one place where you can use the positive psychology that Mickey talks about sometimes, just to say, you know, yeah, I find for myself, because I have a lot of negative self-talk, um, that I'm like, oh, there's negative self-talk. I just say that, and that just creates this sort of, it loses its hold as soon as I say that. Um, and I just say to myself, I'm done with negative self-talk. Not, you know, not that I can stop it, but it's like I'm not indulging it. I'm not engaging it. Um, and then you can do if you notice that there's an emotion with the negative self-talk, like you mentioned, shame. That's a powerful one. And just noticing, where you feel it in the body, and just relaxing and letting yourself feel it, and then it can do its thing, and release. I mean, you can't make it go away, but on its own, it will at some point. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Um, I'll just quickly share. I was so incredibly aware these last 2 days. I work from home, and water is essential in the work that I do. And I had 2 new clients today, and yesterday I got a notice at the last minute that they were shutting off the water. And normally I would have just lost it, gotten angry, catastrophized. And I was just really surprised how I just thought, okay, all right, what are my options? What do I do? So immediately, I texted, clients and told them that I could make do. I could, I have a solution. It's happened before, but I wanted to give them the option. And then everything changed. They didn't come when they were supposed to. Everything changed, and I was just allowing everything just to happen. Like I wasn't, and normally I control because everything is timed, and I was so not like that at all, and was able to do really good work. And at the end of the day, I almost felt high from what happened. And I just want to say that I absolutely had a chance to read chapter 5 and 6, and these are chapters that just kind of lit me up to this book, because I was going through something personal, and it just helped me so tremendously to understand. It's a good feeling, and I'm exhausted, and I'm going to have a good sleep tonight and do meditation.
Yeah,
I've been doing it only at night, but
yeah.
it's
What in particular helped? What in particular did you like invoke to be able to do this?
accepting that I was powerless over the situation, that I couldn't change it,
Hmm.
and that I had experienced it before and gotten through it before. And here's a funny thing: for the client that came in the afternoon, I literally had to boil water that I had scooped out of my bathtub, boil it, pour it into funnels. And she was half an hour late, and I was still okay with that. And by the time she got here, the water was working. So I had done that all for nothing. And I kind of went, oh, well, you know, it was like a practice, it was meditative, boiling, pouring, boiling, instead of, swearing. And I just did this and looked, and it was like, I was like, oh, okay, well, I get to use the water from the tap. That's so cool. So my plants got water, and the rest just went down the sink.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I find it so transformative when I just view a situation as like, oh, this is an opportunity to learn to let go. Right? This is the universe helping me to learn.
It was
Yeah.
a beautiful experience,
Yeah.
you know, because I
Yeah.
love my work. So, I have a choice. I could be frustrated and angry, and then I'm not focused. Instead, that's not what happened at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great.
Thanks
Yeah.
for letting me
Thanks,
share that.
Antonella. Yeah. So and that sounds like it's not exactly small stuff because you had to do something about it, but it was maybe medium stuff, maybe like, not big stuff. So that's good. Yeah. It's always good to sort of have an idea of how big the disturbance is because, just to recognize that, you know, um, to keep your expectations low when it's more than the small stuff. And even the small stuff, until you really have some experience with the technique, it's very easy to get um, thrown off, to get tricked by your personal mind, which only wants to avoid any discomfort and to hold on to any pleasure. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. It's just about 8 o'clock. So why don't we go right into chapter 4? So um, chapter 4, the lucid self. Um, so um, in this chapter, Mickey talks about this idea of that it's like being in a theater, and sometimes when we're in the theater, we can just get completely absorbed in the movie, and uh, when that happens, we're not even aware that we're in a theater, right? And how that's just with sight and sound. When you throw in all the other senses and the thoughts and the emotions, um, we just get completely absorbed in our experience, and we lose that sense of perspective, if you will, of kind of context, right? Um, and he talks about this idea of how consciousness can be focused, right? It can be focused on wherever we want to put our attention, and um, it can get easily drawn into, like, it can get drawn into thoughts, or get drawn into our body, get drawn into all sorts of things, and just kind of identify with the object and just lose any sense of perspective, right? So, like, the personal mind says, you know, this is hopeless. I'll never be able to do this. and we just fall into despair, right? With no questioning, no sense of no recognition that it's just an emotion, it's just a thought, no recognition that this is a story that is actually causing me to suffer, you know, that my personal mind is causing suffering right now. There's no sense of that, right? Because we're just right, we just we just believe it. We're just sucked into it, right? So, um, that's this idea of the consciousness collapsing, right? And most of the, for most people, most of the time, that's how we are. We're just completely identified with our experience, right? We're completely identified with our thoughts and our emotions and whatever's going on around us. Um, and we don't have that sense of, oh, you know, this is me, and this is what's going on in my experience. Mickey talks about this idea of, I think he talked about it actually in chapter one, but it's really useful here. This idea that, if you look at a picture, right, and you look at one picture, you look at a picture of a child, and then you look at a picture of a tiger, and then you look at a picture of a flower, and you don't, when you're looking at the flower, you don't think, oh, I'm the flower, right? Or I'm the tiger, right? You know that you're the one who's looking at it and that it's just a picture. But in our experience, we completely identify with our experience and just, like, I'm sad, I'm useless. This is never going to get better. They shouldn't be doing that, right? Um, I have to solve this problem, and we just identify with it and have no sense of perspective. And so this lucid self that he's talking about is just noticing that you're the one who notices, right? When you're aware that I'm the one who's aware of this, I'm not the sadness, I'm not the shame, I'm not, whatever's going on, then, in a way, that's enlightenment. That's being awake, right? That's you're now, you have some freedom, um, some perspective on whatever's going on, and then you can do things like relax, release, lean back. You can't do that when you're in just fallen into object consciousness. Um, so and so this directing our consciousness, right? This idea that we can direct our consciousness, we can expand it, we can focus it, we can turn it back on itself, right? By asking who notices or who's aware. That's really all you need to do to um, to gain like a place of solidity in that moment, right? Um, but one of the things he emphasizes here is it's really difficult to extricate yourself because it's so pervasive. I mean, all these sights and sounds and thoughts and emotions, and when you mix them all together, they just become so powerful. They suck your consciousness in, right? And we're so used to that too. So, it's not easy to just, you know, become lucid, become, awake, if you will, right? Awake to the fact that these are just thoughts and these are just emotions and this is a story I'm telling myself. And, uh, I'm having this negative self-talk, and I don't have to believe it, right? And I can see the effect it's having on me. And so this is creating a very strong motivation to notice it and not engage with it and not believe it, right? So you gain all this power when you have this awareness that you're the one who's aware, right? Just knowing, oh, this is a thought, this is an emotion, right? Um, any anyone want to comment or question? Linda, yeah.
I just want to say, last week when you did your demonstration of was riveting, because it really, instead of a theory, it really gave this really intense feeling of being able to have a little window of insight of what you're talking about. It's funny, I was just having a flashback, because it, like you like, the theory sounds great, it's a theory, and then but when you actually demonstrated it, it was completely riveting and completely illuminating.
Oh, well, thank you, Linda. Yeah. Well, I mean, what I notice is that Mickey, he kind of makes it sound easy. Um, and he'll put in there in the book, every once in a while, this is difficult, but he kind of makes it sound easy. And you know, when I was rereading the chapter today around, about being, James Bond, and having James Bond's thoughts and emotions and sensations and um, um, and if you're hooked into all that, like, how do you know you're not James Bond, right? Like, how would you know, right? Like, it's really, you know, and we're hooked into this idea that, I am this thought, I am this emotion. The story that I'm telling myself is true, right? It's really so, and it's this is why it takes practice, right? And I know a lot of you have meditation experience, so this may not be, you may already have this ability to, recognize that thoughts are just thoughts and emotions are just emotions, and a story is just a story. But, I mean, I still get tricked all the time, right? The personal mind is powerful. It knows everything we know. It has, all the intelligence, and it wants to defend against any discomfort. And it wants to feel good, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we're like, I'm doing this practice so I can feel better and suffer less. But the problem is that resisting the present moment, is not an effective strategy. It actually is the source of our suffering, right? So, this course is really just about understanding that and putting it into practice. Yeah.
I've just been so much more aware this week about all kinds of resistances that have I'm just more aware. All of these things have just started surfacing. And I think the one that's kind of disturbing to me, and so I'm really interested in your take on this, but I've been experiencing a lot of resistance just to sit down and do my meditations every morning. And that's new for me. I mean, I mean, there have been times when I just cannot wait to get up and get in my special place. And I've just been feeling it more and more and more. And so I practice the lean back, um, blanking on all the three
Relax, release,
phrases.
lean back. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And sometimes that's helpful, but I guess I'm wondering if anybody else feels some resistance to doing meditation, or
Yeah.
I'd love some camaraderie on this one.
Can I ask you a question, Jill?
Please. No, I'm
Um,
sorry.
so
Yes.
so
Kidding.
yeah, and then please chime in, other folks.
Yeah.
No, how does the resistance manifest? Like what thought, what emotion, what bodily sensation comes up, and then, because the the better we can recognize,
Yeah.
exactly what the resistance is, then we can see through it, and then it loses its power.
Okay.
So how?
So, okay. So I get up in the morning and get my coffee, take a couple slurps. Oh, time to go meditate because this is my time. And then I feel kind of this heaviness inside my chest. Oh God, maybe I should go vacuum. Maybe I should do da 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 da. Oh my, I mean, I just feel some density, internal density about even coming back to really settling down. And once I settle down and then I start breathing or try and breathe through it, sometimes I can do it. Other times I see myself going right up into the head, and I try and distance from it and go, everything that's going on is impersonal. It's not about me. It's just impersonal stuff. But it's like all of this kind of conglobulated stuff, energy together, and I just am not feeling the freedom that I used to.
Yeah. So when you feel this tightness in the chest, this heaviness in the
Yeah.
chest, is there any sense at all that you don't like it?
Oh, hello.
Right,
Yeah, big time,
right,
big time, big time.
right, right.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's resistance right there, is the not liking it, right? Because
Yeah,
and maybe what you're doing there is that when the heaviness comes up, you're like, what can I do to make this go away? Now, you might not, have exactly that mental talk come up, but this idea that, you were saying maybe I should do something else other than meditate, because you basically, how can I find a way to make this stop, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and what the practice calls for in that moment is to recognize, not only, like, there's this stuff coming up and I don't want to feel it. So I don't want to feel it is resistance. And so if I drop the resistance, then I let myself feel it. And I don't have any idea that I want it to go away,
Okay,
right?
say that last part again.
And I don't have any, I'm not trying to make it go away, right? You probably have a sense of I want it to go away, and just recognizing I want it to go away is resistance. So let me experience I want it to go away, right?
Oh, okay.
Experience I want it to go away. Let me experience that sense of struggle. Let me
Yeah.
experience that aversion to this sensation, right?
So as you talk about this, what I'm feeling inside my body is I can feel the dis-ease in my body around all of this. And then it's like, okay, that's just a part of it. Sit back and let it come.
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because it's like, this is a samskara coming up. Yay, yay. Now, I'm getting it. It's halfway out of my body. It's come up from the depths. Yay, right? Now I can let it do its thing. I can let it expend its energy and move freely and, whoop, you know, be gone. The difficult part is that it's uncomfortable to do that.
Hmm.
And there's a part, and there's in coming chapters, there's this sense of fear that, oh my God, I can't let myself experience it. If I do, something bad is going to happen, right? So there's some fear there. There's some not wanting to experience pain, and it's dropping all of that and just seeing the discomfort, seeing the fear, seeing the pain as the doorway to freedom, right? As the crack where the light gets in, as they say, right? Um, but this is the point that I think this is like the the crux of the practice is recognizing when you're trying to avoid discomfort and dropping that wanting to avoid it, wanting it to go away, right? And really just letting
Oh,
it be.
yeah.
And so, it starts out as this sense of I don't really feel like practicing today, but it's the immediate call is to just let yourself feel that that feeling of not wanting to practice, that feeling
Okay, That
in
that
your
that's
chest.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you. That was clarifying.
yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Great.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, did else want to share there? Or?
I was just wondering if we're trying to all develop like a certain level of masochism.
Well, no more than, it's masochistic to, exert yourself lifting weights or,
No, but exactly, right? You're supposed to see what you dread and what's difficult as, it's no pain, no gain. It's like, okay, here's some pain. This means I'm going to be.
yeah, well, it's
Mm.
it's short-term pain for long-term gain, right?
Mhm.
It's removing the thorn, which we're going to read about. There's a whole chapter on that
Mhm.
that we'll read next week. But um, you know, it's you can go through some pain and allow it to release, or you can stuff it back down um, and you know live with it for the rest of your life. You know.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
anyway, it's this is about transforming our being, right? Unblocking our energy flow, uh, unblocking our joy, our 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 love, our enthusiasm, and so you know, um, you got to break some eggs to make the cake, right?
Yeah, but it's just, I mean, the thing is, you really are flipping your attitude around
Yeah,
pain and discomfort and trying to look at that as, oh, this is a good thing. This is something that I need if I'm going
yeah,
to make progress,
yeah,
instead of just running for cover.
yeah. Well, there's the discomfort, and then there's the story we add on the discomfort, right? So if the story we add on the discomfort is this is awful, I can't take this, I don't want to feel this, then that's one experience. And if the story we add on it is this is an opportunity to learn to let go, this is purification, this is fantastic, that's a very different experience with the same sensations, right? With the
Mhm,
same emotions.
mhm,
Yeah. But
So the
Question.
part that I have, go
um,
ahead.
Just a quick
sorry,
question.
what? Yeah, Michelle, sorry. Philip, I just
Okay.
want to give out others. Michelle hasn't shared yet tonight, so I figured she, yeah,
Sure.
don't mind. And then,
I haven't read the whole book yet, so he may get into this. But as you mentioned, since there are people who do have experience with sticking with, um, as we learn to not listen and disengage, disidentify with the thoughts and feelings, if there's a practice of recognizing that and being with, does he get into like a trauma informed approach at all?
No, no, not at
So
all.
just that, and I mean, I think, so I think that that's really important to mention at some point because I notice that what comes up for me partly is having had a past experience of being really good at just staying with, and that actually being not always a good thing, knowing when to also recognize that, yeah, I'm not adding an extra story on, I'm doing this because this is what I need to do, but also knowing when it's important to um, not resist, but also choose to pull back and just resource, as the saying, as the terminology goes.
Yeah,
Do you,
yeah.
do you talk about that at all?
Um,
Or what is your
I
take?
think
Maybe you don't think that's
I can't
important.
remember. Did I talk about it last week? Just this idea that um, in particular, if you have PTSD or something or trauma, um, like big trauma, um, that it may be good to kind of step gingerly, and that you can always go back to just the feeling of your hands or your body on the ground or something like that, or take a drink of water. Um, um, I mean, Mickey is definitely the opposite end of the spectrum from trauma informed mindfulness. He's like, just just let go of resistance. Just let go, let go. Now, um, he doesn't say to focus on the pain. Um, he um, and he's really big about the idea of working with the small stuff, right? So, but I mean, if you do get into overwhelm, um, like you know, panic or something like that, and I'm not, and I should say right off the bat, like I'm not a health professional. I'm not a trauma expert, so I know a very little bit about it. You know, um, um, like, is there anyone here who thinks they might have, you know, big trauma and doesn't know what to do about it? Like, if
I
a
would maybe just say that, like, I think one of the things that, um, as a mindfulness community, like in general, in North America, what we know, like that being the we, is that usually there's at least 10% of a group in any group who have had serious trauma or still have PTSD. So, in that sense, like, and we don't need to make this about what it's all about, but just having learned that myself, I recognize that um, it's important as we have techniques that are really useful like these because I only learned because I didn't know when to pull back. If it's a panic attack for anyone, then it's easy because like your system's saying, forget this, like I'm not doing this anymore, right? Like but sometimes we can actually be, in a sense, so good at staying with that it's like just keep opening to, this is pain, okay, this is a difficult emotion, and we keep opening to, and there are times when that is not actually helpful. So even just to say that, and people can talk to you or look up trauma informed mindfulness could be important. Yeah.
yeah, and and I think it's always good to just notice the impact of the practice on you, right? If you notice that the practice is making you more agitated, more fearful, more whatever, um, then that might be a time to say whoa, you know, and you can always reach out to me and say this is what's going on, and then we can talk. Um, so please feel free to do that. Um,
Hey, Lori.
mhm.
I'm actually in therapy right now. I have been for quite a while for complex PTSD. And what I enjoy about this is I'm a liar to myself about these resistances that I feel come up. And it's really helpful right now for me to understand that I need to be able to recognize exactly when I can feel it and when I need to take that back to a counselor or even just share it instead of holding it in and holding it down. And which I've been doing for years and years and years and years. So yeah, I hear what's being said, but I'm very grateful to be here
Mhm.
and be able to recognize what I've been resisting for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps it's
I,
I maybe just the simplifying of that instead of making it so big and so deep, just having that little bit of an insight where it's okay to feel it maybe would help with the release for someone, who has been doing it for such a long time.
yeah. Yeah. And that's, that's where like I mean, that is the practice, right? Is to give yourself permission and also train yourself in how to open to whatever's going on. And I think what Michelle's bringing up is there may be situations where you don't actually want to open up, or at least not open up, with a sort of like wide open kind of thing, but rather maybe just open up, titrate a bit, just open up a little and then come back, and then open up a little and then come back. Um, and, like Mickey says, um, when some scars come up, um, when they come up when they're ready to be released. Now, whether that's true or not, I mean, and that might not include situations where you know, where there's a huge triggering thing, right? Um, but certainly in meditation, the idea is that if they come up in meditation, then they're probably ready to come up. You're probably ready for them. And I myself, I've never heard anybody say, you know, it was too much. Um,
Yeah, I think my main point is that, like, because we do a lot on our own, especially now, online, and we're not on retreat where we have people.
mhm.
Um, like, this book isn't what's too much for me. I have already experienced and learned through knowing, like, learning, because my point isn't like slow down or not let stuff come up, or they don't come up at the right time. I do agree with all of those things. um, I just recognize that a lot can start happening and transforming, and then and having been on both sides of, like, leading or being the participant, just I think that what we're learning is that's important is, like, people can have an experience and then go home, and we don't know as the leader necessarily that there's something has happened. And if a person doesn't recognize how to deal with that, then so yeah, just putting out, like, let's dive in and let's let everything come up and all of that, and it can be important, like Kelly said, to be seeing someone else as well, if you have things, to mention it to you or to mention it to a counselor.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Um, so it's 8:30. I'm just thinking let's just take a very short break, just a couple of minutes. Just an opportunity to stand up and if you need a bio break, go ahead and do that. Um, and just stretch if you like. Mm. Mhm.
One of the things I noticed in the book is that Mickey actually often says, it's easy. That's all you have to do. It's like, oh. I think he says it's easy more often than he says it's difficult.
Yes, yes. And Mickey's like I don't know if you've read The Surrender Experiment, which is kind of his
Read
story
it, I
path.
haven't gotten into
Yeah,
like this one.
it's autobiographical, but it's focused on how he's practiced through his life. So, and what he describes, it basically starts with him in university and having this experience of just spontaneously falling into perfect mindfulness of thoughts. For him, it was like, oh, all of a sudden he became aware that, of his personal mind, and he became aware that there was just all these unintentional thoughts constantly going on, constantly narrating his experience, and it was driving him nuts. And he had no idea what it was. And he went through all sorts of psychological texts and things, and there was nothing about it. And he's looking in the library, all different books, and then he came across the three pillars of Zen, um, and he was like, "Oh, this is what's going on," and that's why he got into
Interesting.
that's when he got into meditation. But the point is that he fell into perfect mindfulness of thoughts, and so he's rather gifted in terms of that. It seems, he's just naturally, is aware that you know, that his thoughts are just thoughts, that he's the one who's experiencing the thoughts. So that's a big head start right there. And then he's obviously someone with just a very strong will, um, very strong motivation. And that is the key to this, is having the strong motivation, is, you know, um, recognizing that um, basically the um, happiness is something that goes on inside, and unhappiness goes on inside. And all the things that I want outside, either I want to happen or I want to avoid happening, the only reason I want them to happen or to avoid happening at the end of the day is so I feel good. Now that, I mean, I'm not, I mean, obviously we care about others, but most of why we do things is because we think that we'll feel good if this happens, or we don't want to feel bad if that happens, right? And what this is saying is, um, knowing that, can't we just focus on what's going on inside? It's such a better way to be happy, and to be the person we want to be, in a positive person, putting out positive vibes to other people. And so knowing that, can we prioritize the inner and recognize that we don't control the outer, and that all this trying to control the outer is having a negative impact on us and those around us. And if you really believe that, you know, then that creates a strong motivation to practice, a strong motivation to let go and stop trying to control everything. And um, uh, when you have the strong motivation, that's when it becomes easy. As long as you're wavering, then it's very difficult to resist the aversion and the attraction, right?
Interesting.
It's like, I mean, this is why people have trouble not smoking, right? Mickey talks about this idea that, you know, people who say I can't stop smoking, it's like, well, you're the one putting the cigarette in your mouth. How can you say you can't do that, right? It's because their motivation isn't enough. If you say to someone, I'll give you $1 million if you don't smoke today, I mean, most people could not smoke today if they had that kind of motivation, right? So, anyway, um, so chapter 5, infinite energy. So, Mickey talks here about this idea, and he uses this example of, you know, your boyfriend or girlfriend or partner breaks up with you, and then you get all depressed and you have no energy and you can't get out of bed and you're just ordering pizzas and not cleaning up, and it doesn't, like, you just have no energy, and then you get a phone call from the person who broke up with you saying, "Oh, I made a big mistake and can I come over?" And then whoop, the energy is there, right? And it has nothing to do with eating or sleeping. It's just like the mind just, something happens and the energy is there. And he's saying this energy is the most important thing, right? This energy is what makes life good, Like having this energy means you're happy, you're enthusiastic, you know? Um, having not having this energy, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're not in a good state. And so, um, it's all about this energy, and you know, and he says we're actually the ones who close off our own energy, right? Because we say to ourselves, I don't like that. I don't like that. And then we close our hearts and the energy stops flowing, right? And it happens automatically. We get into this habit, right? And it's all caused by our preferences. It's all caused by saying, I don't like that and I like that. Um, and most of it is pretty subjective, right? Like no one likes having their arm cut off, but I mean, whether you like, you know, this food or that, whether you like when somebody opens the door for you or not, whether you like, when somebody is forward or, very reserved, whether you like, I like, there's most of the stuff that we react to is pretty subjective and it's based on our past impressions. Um, so he basically says you should make the decision. Seeing as when you're closed, you're basically unhappy when the energy is turned off. And when you're open, when your heart is open, you feel good, you feel happy. Wouldn't you want your heart to be open all the time? Like who wants to close? Closing is no fun, right? It kind of sucks. And yet we close all the time, you know? We get angry with someone and we'd rather be right than be happy, right? Um, we get and somebody says, "Oh, don't let that bother you," just be happy, and you're going, "What do you mean be happy? Do you know what they did?" Da, 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 right? And that's basically deciding to close. And so, you know, he says, um, and he says like it's mostly about stuff that's going on outside, what this one's doing or that one's doing, or the weather, or the stock market, or what's going on at work, or whatever it may be. And we can't control any of that, right? So given that we can't control it, and given that when it goes against our preferences, we close, doesn't it make sense to say better to let go of the preference than to try and control the outside world, right? Can I just say, oh, you know what? I'm not going to close. Oh, they turned the water off in my building today without any notice. Um, yeah, I'm not letting my heart close over that. right? It's basically making this vow that says, I am never, I never want to close, right? It is never worth closing. And you can simply say to yourself, when something happens that you don't like, that you didn't want, you can say, is this worth closing over? And it's never worth closing. Because even if it's something you have to deal with, you're better able to deal with it if the energy is flowing than if the energy is blocked. You're better able to deal with it if you're in, a calm, solid state than if you're, all angry and frustrated and or depressed or whatever it might be. Right? So, the message here is it's never worth closing. And this has helped me tremendously, because this is my go-to. My go-to when something happens that I'm like, oh my God, I don't want, I don't like this. Um, um, like I found myself on a GO train last October, and it was my first time on public transit since COVID, and and I thought, and it's the weekend, and I thought there'll be hardly anyone on the train. And then the 2 trains before were canceled. The thing was packed like sardines. And I didn't realize that till I got on the train. And then here I am in this train with all these people, and I'm like, my personal mind is freaking out, right? And and I said to myself, is this worth closing? Is this worth closing? I just kept, and it didn't just go away, but I just kept reminding myself, is this worth closing? No, it is not worth closing. Whatever's going on, it's not worth closing. And that made the situation a lot better. And I could just sit there and relax, release, lean back, right? Asking myself that question, is this worth closing, was like the key to be able to practice with this, right? I did not take the GO train home, though. I called a lift. So I'm not saying just throw yourself into any situation and don't do anything about it. But is this worth closing is a wonderful phrase. If you really believe that it's never worth closing, and it's never worth closing. So that's chapter 5, more or less. Any questions or observations or anything you want to share about this? Yeah.
Just when I was reading the chapter, like he sort of skips over the part where he says, it's easier to be open and then choose not to close, but if you're coming from a closed spot, that's harder. And I think for me, I think I get closed without even recognizing it. I was doing something today with someone, and I was looking forward to it, but in the end, it was sort of like, kind of like stale, and I was holding back. But it's like hours afterwards, I say, well, what was that about? But it's like when you're closed, you don't see it the same way. So and he did admit in the chapter that it's easier to take this position from an open position, and it's harder to actually, when you're in a closed position, to know how to recognize it and open up.
Yeah.
And when you have the habit of being closed, when your default position is closed, then it's like, it's funny reading the chapters. It's like, it's kind of it's true. It's like he's sort of, and I listened to it, just a little clip of him, and his voice is like, so yeah, whatever. It's like, yeah, just do it. And then you read it, it's like, oh yeah, that just makes so much sense. But actually, like I by the end of the day, I was quite depressed, because I was like, what did I just do today? And I don't see the point where I could actually see what was going on and change that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we're all conditioned to close, right? We all have this habit of closing. If you have preferences, then you are conditioned to close. So, um, you know, and you know, so we're just starting to work with this stuff, right? And so, like when I was on the GO train, I mean, I closed, and then I had to ask myself the question, is this worth closing, right? And one of the things that is, that he mentions in the chapter that's kind of important, actually. So I'm glad you're asking this question. Is that we can't open. We can close, but opening kind of happens on its own. So we can create the conditions for opening by asking, is this worth closing? By relaxing, releasing, leaning back, and allowing, the whatever disturbance is going on, allowing ourselves to feel it, and having it, either, having it calm or release. Um, so we can create the conditions for opening, but we can't open. But closing is something we do, right? But we do it automatically in many cases, in most cases. And so it's a matter of, you know, when we close, recognizing, oh, isn't that interesting? This thing happened and I closed. And why did I close? I had this thought that caused me to close, or I had whatever that caused me to close. Um, and so, and when you're closed, to practice relax, release, lean back, and just be with whatever's there. So, what you can do is cultivate this strong motivation not to close when you're open, right? That's the trick. And then whenever you notice it, and it's going to be after you close, right? Because the samskara makes you close. So the samskara needs to be released in order for you not to close. And that's something that happens through the practice of relax, release, lean back. Right? So it's not something that in the moment, like in the moment of reactivity, the samskara is there. And it doesn't just like, we have to open to it in order for it to release. And even when we open to it, most of the time, unless it's a small one, it it you know it weakens, but it's not gone, right? But over time, it can get weaker and weaker until it has very little power. Or sometimes it can just be gone. We have no control. That's grace. I mean, whether the thing releases or how much it releases, that's just grace. But um, it's really having this attitude that, oh, the samskara has come up. Isn't this great? Isn't this great, right? Not to get down on ourselves for the reactivity. The reactivity is just the manifestation of the samskara. It takes time to actually, reduce the samskaras and reduce the blockages and, have the energy flow more. Um, okay. So it's 8 minutes to 9, so I'm thinking maybe we move on to chapter 6, unless anyone have a burning question or
Just a quick one.
yeah.
What was your reasoning for asking for a lift after, pertaining like to something here where like it was messing with your spirit or chi or whatever, or was it just some other reason?
I didn't want to catch COVID.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Period. End of story. Very easy. Okay, so chapter 6. Emotions. Um, so, one of the things that this practice has really impressed upon me is that when it all comes down to it, life is all about emotions, right? Emotions are what give life its richness. I mean, in a sense, they are what life is about. Um, if you have no emotions, I remember actually in law school, in this course, um, had nothing to do with the law, but um, when they studied people who had no emotions, certain people had these brain injuries and they had no emotions. And when they had no emotions at all, they couldn't make any decisions. Like they were completely incapable of making decisions, like about their own lives, um, because they had no nothing mattered. If you have no emotions, who cares whether it's like this or like that, right? What 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 motivates us in life is that we enjoy the pleasant emotions and we don't enjoy, we suffer with the negative emotions, right? And so emotions are, and they're kind of elusive, right? They're not quite thoughts, and they're, I mean, there's a bodily sensation component to them, but they're not exactly like just like, feeling, touch. They're kind of like the wind. I think Mickey talks about them like, they're like a wind blowing through us, right? And they have great power over us. Great power, right? Um, and they can be small and they can be big. And when they're big, their power is huge, right? I mean, they can grab us and get us to do anything, basically, when they're strong enough. And so, um, uh, they're really interesting, right? And in a way, experiencing emotions, it's what life is about, right? And even the negative emotions can be profound and rich, right? I mean, why is it that we like to go see horror movies, right? Because it's like experiencing the fear without the story, without it having to do with us, right? Why is it that we go to a really sad movie and, you know, like, I remember going to see Schindler's List, and I mean, afterwards, I just sat there in the theater sobbing, right? And when someone said, "How was Schindler's List?" I was like, "You got to go see it, right? You got to go see it, right?" Um, and it's and why is that? Why is it that I recognized that was a rich, important experience, one that, you know, I I felt I benefited from, and yet we run away from our own sadness, from our own fear, um, from our own loneliness. Um, it's because we identify with it, right? It's because of the story behind it. And so when we learn to, to sit in the seat of awareness and have that perspective and recognize this is just an emotion, this is not me, then, we really can, as Mickey says, let the heart play its tune, right? He talks about the heart, you know, emotions are the heart playing its tune, right? Um, and they're powerful and they're beautiful, and they can also really screw us up. Um, and even the positive emotions can really screw us up. We, you know, you're married for 20 years and you meet someone and you feel this amazing emotion, and then the next thing you know, you're, saying goodbye to your family and going off with the tennis pro, right? So, or he gives the example, not in this chapter, but in some of his talks of, you have this vacation in Hawaii when you're young, and then, and it's a wonderful, wonderful time, and then from then on, everywhere you go, you're comparing to Hawaii, and you're never happy because it never is as good as Hawaii was, right? So you've created this positive samskara. You've created this this desire, this condition that you're always, I can't be happy unless it's like this, right? Or you see a sunset and then you want to go back the next day and watch the sunset again, and it's like you can't recreate that experience, you know? So that's the positive samskara. um, and so he says when something happens that we don't let pass through us, then and we don't let it pass through the heart. We don't let it pass through the mind, so it goes to the heart. We don't let it pass through the heart, so then we store it. And it actually can start in the heart or it can start in the mind. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that we resist it, and it can't pass through the heart, which means we don't want to experience the emotions. We can't let it pass through the mind. We can't accept that this is how things are, and you know, I I can just allow things to be as they are, right? Doesn't mean you don't do anything about it, but in this moment, this is how things are, and in this moment, there's just this moment. Any action is going to take place in the future, not in this moment, right? So, um, you know, when you don't let it go through, when you resist it, then we store it as samskaras. Um, and he talks about this idea of the blue Mustang, seeing your girlfriend or boyfriend in the blue Mustang, and then years later you get triggered by a blue car or whatever, right? And so, he just describes the operation of the samskara, how once we store it, we create this thing that can be, set off by anything that creates an association with it. And we can be set off in terms of a negative thing, negative emotion, or we could be set off in terms of a positive emotion. It could create this sudden desire, right? This longing. So, and he asked this question I thought was really good. He says, do you want to control the world? Or are you willing to stay open and let life purify you? Because the bottom line is, you can't control the world. Like, you just can't. You can do your bit here and there, and sometimes it'll work out, and sometimes it won't. You cannot control the world. So maybe you should just accept that. And, learn not to resist life. And then you won't create all these samskaras. And you'll be much happier. Mm. Anyone have any thoughts on that or any questions?
I was just looking at one of the points that you made under why does the heart close? It says we convert outside events to internal energy patterns. Can you give me an example of, I don't know if it's because I'm tired, but I can't think of what that would be. Can you give me an example?
We convert, sorry?
We convert outside events to internal energy patterns.
Oh, yeah. So, something happens outside, um, say, I'm stuck on a train with a ton of potential COVID people. um, and I I feel fear come up, and I don't want to
Okay.
feel the fear, right? And this may happen automatically, and so I resist it. I resist feeling that emotion, and therefore that experience gets stored inside of me. So I've taken what went on outside and I've stored it as this emotional experience inside. And then
Okay.
there it sits.
Fair
Yeah. If I had just let myself feel it, then I wouldn't store it. Marguerite? Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, it isn't like you say, our whole lives are run by the energy of emotions. It's not the emotion that's ever the issue. It is the resisting or the clinging on, the wanting or the rejection of emotions that in that very act causes it to be stored. It can never actually pass through. But I guess we just forget about it. Or we not forget, we just, once it's stored, then at some point it'll have to come up. Energy that gets stored has to eventually somewhere somehow come up, perhaps in a similar experience or something.
Yeah, and what generally happens is it tries to come up and then we push it back down again. So we
Yes.
experience this reaction, but we don't want to feel it. So all we wind up doing is, at best pushing it back down, at worst strengthening it, right? Because
Right.
when we resist something, we give it energy. Um, but this is where I find Mickey doesn't tend to talk about this, but when I look at my life, like emotions are like the stuff of life, right? And when I'm feeling love, I I I I I act on that love, and and I I want and I love I like it, right? And when I'm feeling, shame or despair or anxiety or whatever, sadness, whatever, um, like, you know, on the one hand, we want to allow ourselves to feel the emotions. On the other, I wouldn't wish these negative emotions on anybody, right? I mean, if all we're ever experiencing in our life is negative emotions, and we're just constantly letting ourselves experience them, but constantly experiencing negative emotions, which isn't really a realistic scenario, but anyway, like it's like I feel I feel bad. I feel compassion for people who have who feel negative emotions most of the time, right? Especially strong ones. I mean, it's awful, right? I remember somebody asked Thich Nhat Hanh one time, "What's the meaning of life?" And he looked at them and he said, "Life is wonderful, and life is awful." And what he meant was, life is wonderful when you're experiencing positive emotions. Life is awful when you're experiencing strong negative emotions, right? I mean, he didn't say that, but that's the conclusion I've come to. When I'm experiencing joy and love and gratitude and enthusiasm and contentment, life is wonderful. And it doesn't matter what happened in my day. And when I'm experiencing despair and anxiety and loneliness, life is awful. And it doesn't matter what happened outside today. And having practiced this for a while, there's a part of me that, I ask someone, how was your day? And they tell me what went on outside. And it's like, that's not what I was asking. How was your day? How was it inside? Right? Because that's what matters. You know, they shut off the water in my apartment building today. Okay, and we all assume that means you had a terrible day, but it doesn't. You might have had a great day because your emotions, your in response, were positive.
Can I ask you what were your positive emotions when you were in the train? Like I understand that this notion of feeling the feelings, but I don't understand how you behave when you're feeling those feelings.
Ah,
So
okay.
you're in the train.
Yeah, they're two different things. So what I'm saying is that when we release our samskaras, we have more positive emotions because those positive emotions are there when the energy flows. And so what I was doing in the train was doing a practice to release those samskaras. So it doesn't mean that I was in a positive emotional state, but actually I was in a far more positive emotional state than had I, just allowed, sort of fallen into all these thoughts of, oh my God, you know, what are the chances I'm going to get COVID? Oh my God, that person's, they're not even, their nose is hanging out of their mask. And oh my God, there's so many people in here and we're in such close quarters and there's no fan. And I would just be, But instead I was like, I'm not going to let this, is this worth closing? No. And I felt good that I remembered that. And I felt good that I was practicing relax, release, lean back. And I felt good that I was able to tell myself, well, I have no control over this. I just need to accept it. If I get COVID, I get COVID, but it's fun, like nothing I can do about it. So I'm just, you know, not going to worry about it. So I wouldn't say that that was a wonderful experience, but it wasn't an awful experience. And the fact that I practiced meant that you know, that I would have fewer samskaras in the future and experience nicer emotions in the future.
So my understanding of serenity is accepting things that you cannot change. There's a whole prayer around that, right? So is that what it is? Is it the same thing? Because that's what I try to do. If I'm in a situation that I can't change, I just accept the fact that I can't change it. It doesn't mean to say that I enjoy it, but what I'm not doing is suffering.
Right.
Because I'm not fighting against the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because that's what this course is all about. Accepting what is and letting ourselves feel whatever is going on in the moment. Right. So yeah, absolutely. Um, but in the moment we can't make ourselves feel like this or like that. That's kind of a key thing. In the moment, whatever we're feeling is just what's there. And we don't want to resist it by saying, serenity now, serenity now, serenity now, right? So, yeah. So that serenity prayer can be very helpful, but we can't force serenity. Yeah. We can clear our samskaras so that it's much more, so it's good, so it's going to happen more in the future. Okay, so we're almost out of time. I just wanted to go over the home practice for next week, and it's very similar to this week because the moments of centered consciousness and the small stuff, that's going to continue for the entire course because that is the heart of the practice, right? Um, so and continuing to keep the learn to let go sheet with you until you know until it's ingrained in your cells. um, the meditation this week is more focused on emotions, so similar to the one we did at the beginning. It does have counting breath in it, so if you can just like not count the breath, you can just do something else. Um, but most of it has counting breath at the beginning, and then it goes into emotions, and different lengths. The other thing is just practicing noticing when your heart closes and asking yourself, is this worth closing? And then just reading the next 3 chapters and let the heart play its tune. So this is kind of a fun one. Watch a movie or listen to music that you know will stir strong emotions, like sadness, joy, or fear. The purpose is to fully experience whatever emotions come up. So, if you notice that thoughts are coming up saying, oh, they're just tugging at my heartstrings, this is a silly movie, blah, blah, blah. Often I find my mind doing this in a movie, like, oh, this is just, uh, uh, so predictable or whatever, right? But instead, just let yourself feel it. Whenever you have a thought that wants to say, eh, you know, instead just go with your heart, right? I did this once on a plane watching Crazy Rich Asians, and I had the most amazing experience watching. This was like flying home from Mickey's place, and I had the most amazing experience. And I kept thinking to myself, this is such a schlocky movie, but it was just like, just let myself go with it. Just go with it, right? So, you can do something like that. You can do something like a horror movie. You can do something like a tragedy or a sad movie. Just, do something that's going to stir up your emotions or music, and just let yourself feel the emotions. Just have fun feeling the emotions. Um, okay. So thanks everyone for coming tonight. If you do have if you want to stay on and ask a question or share something, feel free to do that. And please feel free to email me if anything comes up or if you have a question. And we can always set up a call. And actually, speaking of setting up a call, um, so we're going to have consultations. So I'll be dividing you into 2 groups. So the group 1, I'll be emailing you this week to set up a time. I just use Calendly, so you just select a time, and they're half an hour. And I find the one-on-ones are really where the rubber hits the road in terms of how to practice with this stuff. Really going through like, what the thoughts were, what the emotions were, what the bodily sensations were, what you did with them, in great detail. So that is where the rubber hits the road. Okay. So have a wonderful week, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
thanks,
Thanks,
Laurie.
Laurie.